I want to tell you something about forests that most people never consider. Trails are not paths through the wilderness. Trails are the boundary between what humans are supposed to see and what the forest actually contains. Everything on the trail side is managed, mapped, documented. Safe in the way that anything controlled by human hands can be called safe. Everything on the other side of that boundary is something else entirely. I spent 4 years as a Forest Service trail crew worker in the Appalachian range. My job was to maintain that boundary. Clear fallen trees. Repair washed-out sections. Replace trail markers. Keep the line between the human world and everything else clean and visible. In 4 years I walked approximately 9,000 miles of trail. The last mile I ever walked was not on any trail. It was 60 miles deep into terrain that no maintained path has ever touched. And what we found at the end of that mile should not have been possible. Not geographically. Not logistically. Not by any measurement of human capability or endurance. But it was there. It had been there for a very long time. And when we found it, it already knew we were coming. My name is Marcus Webb. I no longer work for the Forest Service. I no longer go into any forest for any reason. And after I tell you what we found in that unnamed section of the Appalachian Range, I think you will understand exactly why. Trail crew does not go off trail. That is not a suggestion. It is a written rule in every Forest Service manual going back decades. You maintain the trail. You do not leave it. If something needs attention beyond the trail boundary, you radio it in and let a different team handle it. I followed that rule for 3 years and 11 months. Then came the storm. A 3-day storm in late October that took down more trees across our section than anything in the previous decade. Whole sections of trail buried under debris. Markers gone. Drainage channels blocked. The kind of damage that takes a full crew months to address properly. On day 4 after the storm, our crew chief, a 20-year veteran named Holt, got a report from aerial survey. The storm had opened a corridor. A natural clearing through old growth that had not been accessible before. Holt said the aerial team wanted ground-level assessment before they decided how to handle it. He picked 3 of us to go in. Myself. A second-year worker named Priya. And a senior crew member named Dale who had worked that section for 11 years and knew the terrain better than anyone in our department. Dale did not want to go. I asked him why. He said, because storms do not open corridors in that section. That section does not have corridors. Those trees have been standing for 300 years. Holt told him to go anyway. Dale went. But before we left the trailhead, he stopped and made each of us write our emergency contact information on a piece of paper and give it to him personally. Not into the system. On paper. By hand. I thought he was being dramatic. The corridor was real. A clean path through old growth exactly as the aerial survey described. Trees down on both sides creating a natural aisle roughly 15 feet wide stretching north into terrain none of us had ever entered. Dale walked the entire first hour without speaking. At the end of the first hour he stopped and crouched beside a tree on the left side of the corridor. He pointed at the bark. At chest height on the tree was a mark. Carved deep into the wood. A single vertical line with 2 horizontal lines crossing it. Like a crude letter H but slightly wrong. Slightly off in a way that made my eyes want to look away from it rather than focus. Dale stood up and looked north along the corridor. He said quietly, "These marks go all the way in." He was right. Every quarter mile for the next 6 hours we found the same mark on a tree at chest height on the left side of the corridor. Always the same. Always chest height. Always left side. Always freshly carved. Wood still pale and raw inside the mark. No weathering. No darkening. Someone had carved 47 marks in the days immediately after the storm. Along a corridor that the storm had just opened. Someone had been ready for the corridor to open before it opened. We found it on the morning of day 2. 60 miles from the nearest maintained trail. In terrain that aerial survey had previously shown as unbroken old-growth canopy with no clearings, no structures, no human sign of any kind. A campsite. Not a temporary campsite. Not a seasonal shelter. A permanent settlement. A fire pit ringed with stones so worn and smoke blackened they had been used for years. Possibly decades. A food cache structure built between 4 trees using techniques I did not recognize, sophisticated joinery, no nails, no modern hardware, nothing that suggested recent construction. A series of smaller structures around the perimeter that I can only describe as markers. Same H-like symbol carved into each one. And at the center of everything, beside the fire pit, a single flat stone. On it was a logbook. Green cover. Forest Service issue. Identical to the ones we used. Dale picked it up before any of us could stop him. He opened it. He read the first page. Then he closed it and put it in his pack without showing either of us what it said. I asked him what was in it. He said, dates. Names. Descriptions. I asked descriptions of what? He said, of us. Today. What we are wearing. What time we arrived. What Priya said when she saw the fire pit. Priya had said one word when she saw the fire pit. She had said it quietly, to herself, under her breath. There was no way anything had hurt her. We made camp 50 yards from the settlement. Holt had told us to assess and return, but the corridor had taken longer than expected and daylight was gone. Dale took first watch. At 2 a.m. he woke both of us. He pointed at the settlement 50 yards away. The fire pit was lit. Not smoldering. Not residual heat from old ash. A full burning fire in a pit that had been cold and dead when we made camp 6 hours earlier. Nobody had passed us. The corridor behind us was the only way in or out. We had been watching it. Priya grabbed her radio. No signal. Not interference. Complete silence across every frequency. We sat and watched the fire burn for 4 hours without moving. At exactly 6 a.m. it went out. At 6:01 a.m. our radios came back. We packed and left without returning to the settlement. Dale kept the logbook. 2 weeks after we returned, Dale called me. He had gone through the entire logbook. Hundreds of entries. Dates going back 40 years. Different handwriting on different entries but the same format each time. Date. Number of visitors. Physical descriptions. Exact arrival times. Exact words spoken upon arrival. 40 years of entries. Every crew, every survey team, every researcher who had ever come within 20 miles of that location without knowing it was there. All described in detail. All documented with accuracy that should not have been possible. The last entry before ours was dated 3 years earlier. It described a wildlife biologist named Sarah who had set up cameras along the perimeter and never once captured what she was looking for. I called a former ranger I had heard about through Forest Service channels. A man named Aaron Cross who people said had seen things in these forests that the service refused to document. I read him the entry about Sarah. There was a long silence. Then Aaron said, "She was in my files. She never knew how close she got." He paused. Then he said, "Marcus. What was the last entry in that logbook? The one after yours?" I turned to the last page. It was dated 2 weeks in the future. It described a phone call between a former trail crew worker named Marcus and a former ranger named Aaron. It described what both of us were saying. Word for word. In real time. I hung up. I have not spoken to Aaron Cross since. I have not entered a forest since. The logbook is in a fireproof safe in my apartment. Last night I opened it to check the next entry after the phone call. There was one. I am not going to tell you what the next entry says. Not because I want to protect myself. I think it is far too late for that. But because it describes someone else. Someone who has not been to that section of forest yet. Someone who does not know they are already in the logbook. If you have worked as a trail crew member, a surveyor, a researcher, or any Forest Service role in the Appalachian Range and something felt wrong about a section you were sent into, tell me in the comments. Use a different name. You may already be in the logbook. Subscribe to the Midnight Files. Some forests do not just contain things. Some forests keep records. And something has been updating that record for a very long time.